This happened over the course of 3 or 4 years when I was a kid. I can't remember exactly when I got the first one, but I started having this recurring half-lucid nightmare maybe once every couple of months. From what I can remember, here's how it would go. I'd be lying down in bed. Only the view wasn't from my first-person perspective. Instead, I'd be looking down at myself from the ceiling like I was viewing my own bedroom through a security camera feed. The out-of-body dissociation always freaked me out. I tried to float or swim toward my body, but I was never able to move beyond swiving my head to look around the room. I was half-lucid, so I knew it was a dream, but that didn't make me any less scared. After calming myself down, I'd start noticing strange things about my bedroom. For one, the digital clock on my nightstand would always be counting in reverse. That was typically the first strange detail I'd notice. And once I noticed that, I'd start seeing other weird stuff. There were these drawings taped to random spots on the walls and dresser, like crayon drawings you'd expect from a kid my age, but I had no memory of ever making them. I wasn't the type of kid who ever drew much, so it wasn't like I had just forgotten about them. They always showed the same thing. A row of people holding hands, all smiling, with one smaller figure who I can only imagine was me. They were always standing in front of a house with a blue roof, but I can't remember much more about the drawings than that. The other detail about the dreams that still sticks out to me is an old toy train of mine that was always sitting in a different spot on my bedroom floor, which was significant because I had lost that particular toy years prior. Anyway, after analyzing my room for a bit, I'd get this unexplainable urge to look out my bedroom window. I'd glance over, and as if it were on cue, a man would appear just a few inches from the glass. He had short gray hair and what looked like a cut on his left temple. That's honestly all I can remember about his face. He would watch me sleep for a few seconds, then start clawing at the window like he was trying to open it from the outside. That's usually when I woke up. Sometimes I immediately ran to the window, and sometimes I was too terrified to even move. But I always ended up checking one way or another. I don't know what I thought I'd find. Maybe claw marks or a smudge from where his hand had been, but there was never anything there, or anyone for that matter. After the 4th time it happened, I finally told my parents. My mom told me that recurring dreams weren't that rare, especially at my age, and my dad chimed in to remind me that they were always just one room away if I ever felt scared. I nodded and acted like that helped, but it didn't. Not really. My dad could tell I was still scared. So he took me by the hand and explored the exterior of the house with me. There was no indication that anyone had been there. No footprints, no smudges on the window, nothing. Even so, that didn't calm my nerves as much as you might think. Keep in mind, this was about 1 year in, so I was having this dream roughly once every 3 months. It wasn't happening every night, not even close. But having the exact same dream 4 times definitely means something, which I knew even at that age. But after that 4th dream, though, they just stopped. For a while at least. I went nearly 6 months without a single episode. And at some point, I let myself believe it was over. It all just kind of faded into the backgrounds, the way childhood fears tend to when life gets more normal. But then it came back. I have no idea what triggered it, but one random night, I had the dream again. Everything was exactly the same as I remembered. The clock, the drawings, the train, everything. But there was something different about that dream that was scaring me twice as much as the earlier ones had. I couldn't figure out what it was. Everything was following the exact same chain of events. But then, as I was looking around the room, I realized what it was. My bedroom window was open. As soon as I saw that, I woke up. There was a period of maybe 5 minutes where I couldn't move. Complete and utter sleep paralysis. And it wasn't a passive sleep paralysis either. My brain was screaming at me to check the window the entire time, but I couldn't drag myself out of bed no matter how much I tried. On top of that, I felt significantly colder, as if cold air was blowing through my bedroom window, which I was convinced was wide open. Those 5 minutes were unlike any kind of fear I have ever experienced. All I could think about was how that man was moments away from climbing through my window. Yet there was nothing I could do about it. When I finally regained control of my limbs, I forced myself over to the window, confirming that it was locked. I couldn't fall back asleep that night. I was too scared. I'm not sure how I was even able to function the following morning. Another couple of months went by, but I wasn't going to be fooled again. Every night before I went to bed, I thought long and hard about the dream in an attempt to brace myself for having it again. I'm not sure if this logic tracks, but I was hoping that keeping the dream on my brain would help me not get too scared should I have it again. To my surprise, that technique actually worked. The next time I had that dream, I wasn't even half as scared. I didn't even bother checking the window after waking up. By the time I had it again, I was barely scared at all. Still, something about it lingered. Not in a scary way, but enough to make me want to bring it up to my parents again. Maybe it was the way I explained it, or maybe it was because it was slightly older, but for whatever reason, they actually paid closer attention this time. I tried to provide as much detail as possible, something I hadn't done before. As I was getting to my description of the man, my parents' demeanor shifted. Not too dramatically, but enough for me to notice. Specifically, it was right as I was telling them about the cut on his forehead. Before I could even finish, my dad cut me off and asked if I was sure about the cut. I told him I was, and he looked over at my mom like there was some unspoken detail that I wasn't aware of. I asked my parents what was going on, and they assured me that everything was fine. Not wanting to upset them, I didn't inquire further. But from that point on, I started wondering if there was more to the story. As it would turn out, a few days after that conversation, my parents sat me down and came clean. It wasn't some dramatic reveal or anything. They just said there was something they wanted to tell me. My mom did most of the talking. Apparently, when I was really little, like too young to even remember, there was a man named Brian who used to watch me sometimes. They always referred to him as Uncle Brian, but he wasn't actually family, just a close friend of my dad from college. I guess he was around a lot when I was a baby and a toddler, especially during the times when both my parents were working full-time. But something happened. My dad didn't give details, just said that there was a falling out between them. Bad enough that they completely cut ties. He said he forbade Brian from ever coming near our family again, specifically from coming near me again. That was the end of it. I asked what caused the fallout, but they wouldn't tell me. They just repeated that it had nothing to do with me and that I didn't need to worry. The only other thing they told me, and this is what gave me a sick feeling, was that Brian had a noticeable scar on his forehead from a car accident he'd been in years before I was born. They didn't connect the dots out loud, but they didn't have to. I was old enough to make the connection myself. Later that night, after my mom had gone to bed, my dad lingered in the living room with me a little longer. I could tell he wanted to say more, like he hadn't been totally satisfied with how the conversation went earlier. After a few moments of silence, he told me his theory. He said he thought the dreams were my brain's way of processing something buried really deep, some memory from when I was little before I could even form full sentences. He mentioned how close I apparently used to be with Brian, how I'd cry when he left the house, how I always wanted him to be the one to read me to sleep. My dad said he couldn't think of any other way I'd know about the scar on Brian's forehead. I didn't know what to make of that. I had no recollection of this Brian person whatsoever. Even now, I still can't recall a single memory with him in it. I had no choice but to move on with my life, though, recurring dream or not. Another handful of months passed. I'm doing my best to describe the timeline as accurately as possible, but it's hard to remember exactly how much time passed in between each dream. That said, the frequency decreased after talking to my parents. I had the dream only once or maybe twice within the next year, but things took a very dark turn sometime in year 4. One night, after waking up from the dream, I glanced over my window, just out of habit, and this time I actually saw something move. It was just a flicker, but I was 100% sure something had just moved from right outside my window. And just like that, all the fear I had spent years trying to prevent came rushing back. It was actually worse. I jumped out of bed and screamed for my parents, who took me very seriously. My dad sprinted outside in his bare feet, while my mom held me tightly. Eventually, My dad came back and started whispering stuff to my mom. They told me to stay put while they called the police. I listened to them and stayed in their room, although I don't remember ever hearing any sirens or other voices besides theirs that night. My dad insisted everything was fine and that the police were going to take care of things. The next day, he confessed to me that he had seen what he thought were extremely faint footprints underneath my bedroom window. I asked him if he thought it was Brian, and he said that was impossible since they had moved and Brian didn't know where we lived. My dad promised me that nothing bad was going to happen ever, and he would turn out to be right. I never had that dream again. My parents don't like talking about this incident, and I can see why. I'm still yet to get a straight answer out of them, and I've since stopped trying. What I can't wrap my head around is the sickening thought that every time I had that dream, there really was someone outside my window watching me. Was it really plausible that someone had been periodically stalking me for 4 years? It doesn't track, and I can't decide what's scarier. If it really was Brian watching me, or just some complete stranger that my brain associated with him for whatever reason. And who knows how that somehow got translated into my dreams. I've done research, and I still don't even know how that would be possible. Maybe he was making a noise or something, and my brain picked up on it. I really can't say. What I can say is that I'm 95% sure my parents never called the police that night. That's something I will likely never get an explanation for. I'll most likely never get any answers regarding this experience since it happened so long ago. But if I do, I'll send an update.